are the best travel vloggers in the world. Whatever answer you just gave, you're wrong. 99% of travel vloggers are unwatchable. They have zero charisma and they have nothing interesting to say. The only travel vloggers worth watching on YouTube are Baldr and Baldr. And today we're going to be looking at their favourite vlogging camera, the Sony X3000. What up nerds, I'm Jay Sharif and today I'm talking about a tech legend. I've mentioned before my belief that right now the DJI Osmo Action is the absolute best vlogging camera. For vlogging, for travel, for action and adventure, there is nothing better. However, not everyone feels the same way. 5 years ago, Sony released a legendary action camera. They called it the X3000 and it became hugely popular with YouTubers, especially with travel vloggers. Today, it still costs £500 on Amazon and it's still used by the most popular and successful YouTube celebrities. But cameras have come a very long way in 5 years. The technology has progressed dramatically, so is the X3000 worth buying in 2021? Let's find out. Today I'm going to compare the X3000 against my DJI Osmo Action. As always, we'll be comparing three things: video quality, audio quality and usability. Before we get into it though, here's a quick tale of the tape. Both cameras are about 120 grams, so very lightweight and easy to carry. Both cameras shoot in 4K at a bitrate of 100 megabits per second. That is fantastic, by the way, but it does mean you need a very fast memory card. You need an SD card with a speed of at least V30 for 4K recording. The Sony is limited to 4K at 30 frames per second, whereas the DJI goes all the way up to 60 frames per second. Now, if I'm honest, I always film in 30p, so this isn't a big deal for me. It's actually kind of stupid to film in 60p, but I'm not going to get into the technical reasons for that today. The DJI has a tiny sensor, about 30 square millimeters in size. However, the Sony sensor is even smaller at 25 square millimeters. And that means that both of these cameras are absolutely terrible in low light situations. And they both have an f2.8 lens, so again, not great for low light situations. The Sony takes images at 8.2 megapixels. The DJI does a bit better at 12 megapixels. That's not surprising because the Sony is 3 years older than the DJI, so things have progressed. Both cameras have excellent audio, even if you're just using the inbuilt microphones. However, it's also very easy to plug a microphone into them too. The Sony has a mic jack built in, and with the DJI you can get a small and cheap audio adapter. Both cameras can shoot time-lapse, and both of them can be used as webcams if you're one of those freaks who likes live streaming your life. Both cameras have inbuilt stabilization, but they achieve that in very different ways. Rather than carry on talking, let's head outside to test them in the real world. God, it's cold today. Anyway, as these are famous vlogging cameras, the best way to test them out is to do some vlogging. So, the first big difference between these cameras is their stabilization systems. The DJI uses the latest state-of-the-art, world-class electronic stabilization. DJI call it Rocksteady, and it is absolutely astonishing how well the stabilization works. Many call it a gimbal killer, and genuinely, I don't think you need a gimbal at all anymore when you've got the DJI. In normal usage, it will smooth out all the bumps and jitters. Where it will start to struggle is in low light situations, and when things get darker, it has trouble stabilizing your footage. That's not a problem for the Sony, however, because the Sony doesn't use electronic stabilization. The X3000 uses something called Balanced Optical Steady Shot, or BOSS for short. This is the same system that you will find in some of Sony's larger camcorders, and it basically stabilizes the video footage by moving the lens and sensor inside the camera whenever it shakes. Basically, it's like having an inbuilt gimbal. And because this is physical stabilization, it works just as well in all lighting conditions. And hopefully right now you can see for yourself just how well it does work. This was the first big reason why the X3000 became so popular with vloggers. Now, let's talk about image quality. In good lighting conditions, like today, both of these cameras will give you excellent video footage. Both cameras will let you manually adjust the white balance, and you can switch to a flat profile in case you want to color grade later. However, the DJI gives you additional manual controls because on the Osmo Action you can also change the ISO and shutter speed. On the Sony, the ISO and shutter speed are automatic and controlled by the camera software. Personally, I do like to set those myself, but they're action cameras and I know a lot of people are happy to keep things on auto mode, and a lot of the time so am I. Now, both cameras have wide angle lenses. The DJI gives you 145 degrees of coverage. However, if you turn on the electronic stabilization, the image will get a little bit narrower. At that point, you will still have a bit of a fisheye look, and you can get rid of that by selecting the D-warp option. And that will also narrow your image a little bit more. And personally, I'm absolutely fine with that because between 90 degrees and 120 degrees is my preferred angle of view. So the DJI Osmo Action suits me perfectly. On the Sony X3000, if you film in 4K, you only have one option. It will film in a super wide 170 degree angle of view. Now, I'm well aware that a lot of vloggers love super wide, and as you can probably see right now, there is a huge difference between these two cameras in terms of what you can see. The Sony is clearly much wider, but what's also worth noting is that the Sony doesn't have much distortion. The X3000 doesn't have a fisheye look, and that's because it has a rectilinear, I can say that right, it has a rectilinear lens. What that means is it doesn't distort the image the way most action cameras do. Once you switch to a lower resolution, the X3000 gives you more image options. At full HD, so at 1080 resolution, the Sony lets you switch between wide, medium and narrow. Personally, I like the medium option because I like vlogging with my camera on a short tripod or monopod, so the medium mode is the best for my needs. But if I'm using the X3000 in 4K, then it automatically switches to the widest mode. In which case, I need to hold the camera closer to me to get the look that I want. Now, before we head back to the studio, I just want to do a quick audio test. By the way, both of these cameras have a wind noise reduction feature built into them. However, that seriously reduces the sound quality, so I've turned it off on both of these cameras. Firstly, let's check out the audio on the X3000. As you can probably hear, the sound is absolutely crystal clear. The stereo microphones on the Sony are right at the front of the device, and the wide angle means you hold the camera close to you. So the sound you hear right now is really good. What's really strange though is, I just scared that bird there. I feel bad now. Where was I? Okay, so the Sony sound. What's really strange though, if I turn the camera around and point it away from me, it still sounds good. Camera microphone sounds good whichever way I point it. That is kind of freaky. I'm not sure how Sony have managed to do that, but it's just one more reason why travel vloggers love the X3000. Now, if we switch to the DJI, it also sounds very good, but you could probably tell it's not as good as the Sony. Given that the DJI Osmo Action is a much newer device, you'd expect it would have better sound. It doesn't, but that's almost inevitable. You see, the Osmo Action is a rugged and waterproof camera, whereas the Sony X3000 is merely splash-proof. So, I could go swimming in this canal with the DJI. I shouldn't, but it would be absolutely fine afterwards. However, if you accidentally dropped your Sony in a large puddle, there's a good chance it would be completely ruined. So it's a trade-off. Do you want your camera to be really rugged, or do you want better sound quality? Because it seems you can't have both. Now at this point, someone in the comments is going to mention the GoPro 9, and I understand where you're coming from, but the GoPro 9 is a terrible camera for many reasons. I will probably go over those reasons in a future episode. For now, I'm just going to say that the GoPro 9 has too many glitches and bugs, and that's why I'm sticking to the Osmo Action. When the GoPro 10 comes out, I'll have some choices to make, and I'm really hoping the DJI Action 2 is released before that happens. For now, though, I love the Osmo Action over and above all other cameras. Before we head back to the studio, just for fun, let's try out both of these cameras with an external microphone. So this is what it sounds like on the DJI Osmo Action with an external microphone. Obviously it's a little bit clearer, and I would use the external microphone in most situations. The only times I wouldn't use the external mic would be if I went swimming with my camera, or if there was some reason I wanted to be inconspicuous. So the mic obviously sticks out. You want to be inconspicuous, you have to use no microphone. Otherwise, I'd keep my microphone permanently attached to my Osmo Action. And now, this is what it sounds like on the Sony X3000 with an external microphone plugged into the back of the device. Is this better? I've never tried it before, and a lot of people complain that the audio comes out distorted. Anyway, that's the external mic test done. Right, time for a stabilization test. Let's go for a run. Which one handled that better? I think it's probably a bit of a draw, that one. But I'm impressed the 5-year-old Sony is so good. I've just come inside, and guess what? It started snowing, and I mean really heavily snowing. This is the UK in April now. How is that possible? What is going on? Anyway, the main point is, in this scenario, I would want to be using the DJI Osmo Action rather than the Sony X3000 because it's rugged and waterproof and can survive all kinds of tough conditions. Anyway, back to the studio. So, what did we learn? Well, we now know that both cameras have great video and great stabilization. We also know that both of them have good audio too. In fact, I've got to say, the audio on this Sony camera, just the inbuilt microphones, astonishing, absolutely astonishing how good the sound is from them. Personally though, I prefer the 4K video coming out of the DJI, mainly because I don't like the super wide angle of view on the Sony. Now, you may disagree, and I totally get that because it's a matter of personal taste. In terms of audio, obviously the sound quality is a bit better, in fact I would say a lot better with the Sony, but to me personally, having a rugged, waterproof camera is more important than perfect audio. That's mainly because I have a history of dropping and breaking cameras. If you are less clumsy than me, then you might choose the Sony for its superior audio qualities. Finally, let's talk about usability. When it comes to vlogging, it really helps to be able to see yourself. And both of these cameras were pioneers in that sense. Obviously, the DJI Osmo Action has this incredibly useful front-facing screen. It makes it very easy to frame your shot correctly when you've got the camera pointed at yourself. I've heard some people describe it as distracting. Personally speaking, I've never found it distracting. Obviously, I hit record and then I check I'm framed correctly, but after a couple of seconds, I automatically stop looking at the screen. So, the Sony also has a screen, but it's an optional extra. Sony call it the Live View Remote, and you have to pay more if you want one. What you're supposed to do is wear this thing on your wrist, or you stick it on a specially designed tripod so you can see what you're shooting. It's a great idea, especially considering this camera is 5 years old, but I have a confession. I have never ever used this screen. In theory, this is really useful for two things. Firstly, to frame your shot, and secondly, to stop and start recordings by remote. But the 4K image on the X3000 is so ludicrously wide that you don't really need to see what's being recorded, and you just need to point it in the general direction of the action and it will capture what you want every single time. In addition, I don't really have any need to remotely start recordings, so I don't need this live view remote at all. However, if I was filming on the Sony in medium or narrow mode, then I would definitely find this live view remote very useful. The only problem with that is that you need to connect the camera and remote via Bluetooth, and that eats into your battery life. Speaking of which, both of these cameras have similar sized batteries, and both of them should give you about an hour of recording in 4K mode. Another couple of usability points to consider: the Sony has a tripod thread built into the bottom. I had to put my DJI in a camera cage just so I could mount it to a regular tripod. The Sony also has a microphone input built into the back of the camera, whereas the DJI needs a small adapter to allow external mics. The thing is, the mic input on the Sony has very powerful preamps, which people have said can be a big problem and lead to bad audio when used with regular microphones. I didn't find that at all. I found the sound absolutely fine when plugging a microphone into the Sony. And of course, the DJI also sounds fantastic whenever you plug a microphone into it. And finally, in terms of usability, it's time to talk about the menu system. If you don't know it already, the menu system on the DJI is an absolute dream to use. It's nice and simple, it's fast and responsive, and it will take you less than 60 seconds to get used to it. Now, the Sony doesn't have a touchscreen. You have to use physical buttons to navigate the menus, like a caveman. Now, for years, I've been hearing reviewers complain about how stupid and complicated the menus on the X3000 are. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. It doesn't take long to figure it all out, and if you get stuck, the user manual is really simple and easy to understand. The one huge advantage the DJI has over the Sony is this quick switch button on the side. Pressing this, you can quickly scroll through the most popular options, so you can easily switch from video to HDR video, to photo mode, time-lapse mode, slow motion and hyperlapse just with one button, and you can even configure that button to your own preferences. In contrast, the Sony is a lot more fiddly. To change settings, you have to go into this very old-school menu system, and the process takes a lot longer, there's no doubt about that. Also, I actually had trouble seeing this menu in very bright lighting conditions and in the dark because it's just a very simple old-school LED, not good. So overall, the Sony definitely comes second in the usability category. So, should you buy a Sony X3000 in 2021? To put it bluntly, probably not. I do think it's showing its age, and it's not worth £500. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like the Sony X3000, and I totally understand why so many travel vloggers use it and they love it. It's a great camera, and it's better than 90% of the action cameras on the market today. But it's a 5-year-old camera. Yes, it has excellent stabilization and excellent audio, but in almost every other way, it's inferior to the DJI Osmo Action, and I'd say it loses out to the GoPro Hero 8 as well. It's not rugged or waterproof, it has no touchscreen, so it's difficult to use. You can put the Sony in a rugged waterproof housing, but it immediately loses the audio once inside. So that's no good for day-to-day use. Also, the ultra-wide angle view on the Sony looks unpleasant to my eyes. That's a personal thing I appreciate. But personally, I don't think you should spend £500 on a Sony X3000, especially when you can buy a DJI Osmo Action brand new for as little as £200. So, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and get rid of my Sony X3000. Later this month, I will be selling this camera, and hopefully, later this year, I'll be upgrading to a DJI Action 2. I expect that will have a slightly bigger sensor, and it will probably have a Bluetooth microphone too, because that's exactly what DJI did when they brought out the upgraded Pocket 2 just a few months ago. A bigger sensor and improved audio in a rugged waterproof package would convince me to give up my beloved DJI Osmo Action. Anyway, that's all from me. Thanks for watching. I'll be back again with another video very soon. Later, nerds!